All right, good morning. Thank you so much for coming to my last session. So we have been through session 1 and 2, which was our introduction to what sourcing is, right? So my super creative titles, sourcing the what and the why, and sourcing the how and the when. So we went over this as a historical thinking skill, how to use it in our social studies classrooms, right? What it is, why to use it, when to use it, right? So the why, to add rigor, to add extra levels of understanding. The how, we went over how to use the SHEG, the DBQ project, a lot of different resources to help incorporate that. And then, of course, when we're writing DBQ essays, but also to be added on as a possible extension activity, right? So many different levels of starting off, right, with an activity that maybe not be content aligned, just to show the skill. So think of when we use the Trump photo from the New York Magazine, the New York Magazine. And then we also did the DBQ point of view activity for the football game, trying to figure out who said what. So just kind of a recap of what sourcing was, and it really was just in a social studies historical lens. And it set us up for our now online civic reasoning, which is open to other contents and useful for students in basically every course they're going to take and beyond. So sourcing 1 and 2, historical lens, talked about what it is, how to do it, right? Then session 3, we opened up more on academic research and how to have students use sourcing when they're doing the research for school, specifically making sure corroborating, going through all of that. And then this one, we're going to talk more about citizenship and life skills. And we are definitely going to hit on social media. So I know social media was brought up as a question in some of the earlier sessions, and it will definitely be addressed today because we are talking about, okay, social studies classroom, okay, post-secondary or just high school even, research and academics, and then this is current to future as we want our students to be informed citizens and not to be swayed by fake news. Okay? So as a recap, I mostly use Civic Online Reasoning from the SHEG group, Stanford History Education group. As you can tell, super big fan of them. So according to the SHEG core curriculum, Civic Online Reasoning is the ability to judge the credibility of the information that floods smartphones, tablets, and computer screens. So the 3 main questions to ask are who's behind the information, what's the evidence, and what do other sources say. So again, who's behind the information is super important, especially when we're doing internet research. We want to know who is benefiting from this fact being out there. Are people literally profiting off of it? What's the evidence? So what are the facts? What's the truth backing this up? And then what do other sources say? The corroboration. So you can see that this really does kind of mirror what we've done with our happy charts or iRead protocols. All those kind of things we use for social studies skills are easily adapted to these civic online reasoning. All right. So last time we talked about how to build the skill of analyzing websites. And now this was typically for academic research. So we used the much longer, kind of more intense assessing website credibility data chart, where we had 2 columns for reasons for confidence and reasons for doubting. This was very much an early on scaffolding project. So for this one, we went over the example of using a Wikipedia article page and comparing, okay, here, it was almost glows and grows. Okay, here are the positives of this side. Here are the limitations. Here are why we can or cannot trust this. So obviously that chart is a little intense for using on a daily basis for a website, but as an activity to show how to analyze sources, it's really helpful. Then we moved on to the CRAP chart. Again, always trying to get kids in with a silly name to help them remember. So the CRAP chart went over currency, which was more of how old is the information, is it current or not, reliability, authority, and so again, who's behind the information, and then the purpose, so what's the motive. And this one ends up mostly being a check chart. So this is super helpful for assignments that require research, but might not require like a whole ton of sources. So I know sometimes, like with my 9th graders, I'll give them, I'm like, okay, we want to fill in this chart. Like, here is a list of sources to use. So if you're going to do just a few sources, maybe under 5, having a CRAP check chart could be really helpful for students to be like, okay, yes, I'm proving that this is a helpful resource. And then, of course, the easiest one here is the suffixes, learning how to know just by looking at the website name, is this a trustworthy one, right? So obviously prizing.edu and .gov as going to be hopefully the most even-keeled and the most truthful fact-based websites, and then going on that. So remember we went over, okay, something that's going to say like .com/blogspot or whatever, probably not going to be super reasonable, or .com, knowing that that's commerce. They're trying to make money off of you joining there or visiting the website. And then some other ones. So and of course the core questions, who's behind it, kind of plays into this. So it's easy to kind of extend the activity for source analysis, or kind of, I don't want to say minimize it, but definitely make it more time management friendly. Especially as we're scaffolding, we would start with the skill-based, right? Going over through the whole chart, then getting to the craft, kind of being able to analyze, and then hopefully students being able to look at a site, look at the name, kind of look over it and see how it is, just kind of intuitively know. But as we know, they really like to go with which website's the prettiest, more so than which one's the most factual. So research versus news. So research is obviously going to take more time. It's going to take more attention. So academic research usually takes more time and requires corroboration. Right? If you're writing a research paper, you need to find sources that back up what you're trying to prove, what you're trying to say. Obviously, as you get older, further along in your academic career, more sources are required. Whereas current events and news consumption is not as thoughtful. A lot of people are relying on headlines or snippets, so it becomes more consumer than thoughtful researcher. So when you're actually trying to write something for school, write a paper, trying to prove your point, you're a lot more thoughtful, you're a lot more intentional with the sources that you're using, go through everything else, whereas with news, a lot of times people are hearing snippets on the radio or seeing on TV, or you're seeing catchy headlines on social media, and we're going to go through an activity that actually handles the headlines and how to tell, or to go through, take the steps. And I don't want to use the word train, but make it to where it's a habit for your students. Okay. So the way students are actually exposed to news and current events, so obviously social media. I know I get a lot of kids telling me, well, I saw this on TikTok, and while I appreciate the curiosity that it is encouraging, TikTok is often incorrect. Ads, of course, seeing ads, viral news, TV news, word of mouth, hearing somebody talk about something and kind of going from there, right? None of these are super scholarly and showing a lot of critical thinking about, is this true, is this not true, what could this possibly done? A lot of it is a lot of response, or, everybody's talking about it, but maybe they don't have a deep understanding. And of course, the ways we wish students discovered news: thoughtfully reading credibly published newspapers and magazines, and listening to even-keeled news channels. Oh, if only our students would come to us with an actual newspaper article, or, I listened to this on NPR. But not the way it's happening. It's more like, Miss G, I watched this YouTube video about aliens in Egypt and I'm like, okay, all right. Not news, but also not true. Thank you. Okay, so one thing that I thought was really helpful, this is called the interactive media bias chart. So I'm going to try and pull this up here. Okay, so this is the interactive media bias chart. So you can see here on the x-axis, right, Ms. Shabanda, here, okay, is our political bias. Obviously, more on the left side is going to be left-leaning, more liberal. The right side, more conservative. And then on our y-axis here, we have reliability score. So less reliable down here at the bottom, and then more reliable at the top. So our less reliable liberal sources over here, and our less reliable conservative sources over here. So obviously, Alex Jones down here in the far right at the bottom. But it shows a lot of our typical sources that we're used to, and you can click on them and it gives you their score. So like NBC News, a reliability score of 45, bias -6, so audience type. So, okay, you have to upgrade because you can do one where it's like pro and it shows you all of it, of course. But just to see it, you can zoom in a lot to see which ones like fall where. So Fox News over here, I guess, should probably tell my parents. Then over here we got ABC more in the middle. So if your students are choosing current events. So like my students for AP Human, I require them to do a current event for each unit. So they have to find a newspaper, or so they have to find an article, so include obviously the title, the source, author, the date when it was written. Oh no. Sorry, I thought my computer died, but it didn't. Everything. So they have to write 2-paragraph summary about what's important in the article, what's going on, and then a 1-paragraph summary where they have to relate it back to the standards for that unit. So any of the standards for like Unit 4 was political geography, so that one was pretty easy for them to find a current event. But showing them this and being like, hey, if your source is way far on the right or the left, like that's not a good, credible source. You're gonna end up in like an echo chamber. You want to stay more in the middle to high, especially the high. The top for the y-axis is original fact reporting, and it is a little disconcerting how few end up in that top section, and how many, right, as much as they're trying to be middle or biased, will end up having opinions or high variation in reliability, right? That's what this section is down here. Of course, like OAN. And then we have analysis or high variation in reliability. We have complex analysis or mix of fact and reporting and analysis. So that's going to be more of our top center. And then we have our fact reporting, and our original fact reporting obviously much lower here. Let's see, our top one we have is, an NBC News website here. Cool. So they have a whole bunch of stuff in here. Anyway, it just shows, again, it has notes here of like most reliable for news, but with opinion, reliable issues or extremism, and then serious reliability issues down here at the bottom. So this is a good one to help students if they're just looking for those current events, or if they're doing research about like a current topic, to help students kind of see. Again, this kind of plays into the noticing things off the suffix, really kind of like off the cuff, not having to do a whole lot of check charting with crap or really analyzing, but seeing like, oh, hey, what I'm reading might not be completely accurate. There's definitely a spin. There's definitely agenda. So that is that.
The Wall Street Journal?
Oh, let's see. Zoom in. Wall Street Journal right here. So good in the middle, in the upper quadrant. So reliable for news. Let's see. Oh, let's see. I would assume they would be in this section. NPR, CNN, The Hill, USA Today right here. Yeah. So most of the ones we know are right there in the middle. Right. Okay, so our next one is our next section is talking about click restraint, and we definitely hit on this last time. We talked about our kids who just like to Google and go to the first site right away. They don't even sometimes, like when they cite their sources, they're just like, from google.com, and you're just like, this is not a source at all. Like, what are you doing? And so the idea here is that one of the quotes from the video that I like and that we'll talk about again in a second is basically like this: the search engine is not a truth machine. So they need to recognize what they're getting and how they're getting it is not always exactly what they think. A lot of our students are very trusting, and I don't want to be like trusting in the system like a crazy hippie kind of gal, but they kind of just trust that things are the way that they are, and they're not questioning why they're being given this information or why someone would want them to think that. They kind of don't see maybe sometimes like some of the darker undertones of like our political system or economic system. So having students to learn, again, to assess credibility, to assess reliability is important for their future, especially, as we want to talk about, I know Davis talks a lot about, has to do financial personal finance and financial literacy. A lot of things people just trust. They don't think that they need to know deeper about information, and it turns out it would really benefit them if they did understand how something worked, especially when it comes to voting. Just recently, there was a lot of statistics released in Florida where it was saying like most people were, when they were answering poll questions, they were saying most of them were pro-choice and against certain things, but yet they keep electing Republican leaders, so the majority are voting for the Republicans who are specifically campaigning against these issues, and there's just like this cognitive dissonance, this lack of critical thinking that's going on, and we want our students to be well-informed and responsible citizens. All right. So I'm going to play this video, and it is very short.
Most students think the top result of a web search is the most trustworthy. They often click on the first search result and hardly ever go beyond the first page. This is a problem because search results can be manipulated by the use of clever search terms and metadata. Companies engage in search engine optimization to push some entries to the top and move others to the bottom. Ads can appear at the top of search results, forcing other results down too. Sometimes, this can place less trustworthy information sources above more reliable ones. Our research with professional fact-checkers showed that they have a different approach to evaluating search results than students. Instead of immediately clicking on the first or second result, fact-checkers practice click restraint. Before clicking on any result, they first examine the titles, the URLs, and the snippets, the brief information under each result, for clues. They look for trusted sources. By engaging in click restraint, they first get a sense of the information neighborhood in which they've landed before clicking on any result. Students, by hastily clicking on the first search result, can end up on a problematic site that leads them to even more problematic sites. The result? Shaky conclusions based on dubious information. Before clicking on anything, fact-checkers scan the list of results. Are certain groups trying to influence the conversations? Might it be helpful to go to the second page of results? Students need to understand that search engines aren't truth detectors. The information they present needs to be deciphered. Click restraint allows students to get a general sense of the information about a particular topic before they dive in head first. With practice, click restraint becomes a habit, a way of practicing just a bit of caution before taking a wrong turn. Spending just 15 to 30 seconds examining search results can make a big difference in students' ability to avoid misleading sources online and find trustworthy ones.
Okay. Okay. So click restraint, so the next two, so click restraint, and then we're talking about in just a second, is basically talking about students' specific internet searching skills, right? Researching, searching for, social content, whatever, school content, teaching students how to do click restraint. Again, like we've talked about, a lot of times they'll click that first little thing in Google, or they won't even click on it. They'll just use the information that is often Wikipedia. So click restraint really kind of filters back to learning what the suffixes is, what the suffixes are, and which one is going to be the most trustworthy and which one will be the most helpful going forward. And then, of course, comparing what they're seeing. Then when you saw the example was like the kid clicked on the first one and it was like, the benefits of sugar, drinking soda is great. That comes back to our question, or our idea of, does it seem questionable? Does it seem too good to be true? Do you want to look it up on your media bias chart? Do you need to, or just look through the sources? Are any of your other search results having a similar thing? Do you see any trusted organizations? Do you see any .gov? Do you see any .edu to help kind of guide their search? And also explaining to them they can go past the first page of Google. There's only the first little bit of so many offerings, especially when I don't think that they consider the manipulation of search results. So often now, luckily, a lot of them are labeled ad or ad sponsored, but still, that's really small, and a lot of our students are not being very discerning. So if we can kind of show them, hey, let's look through this, or hey, you can also go to the second page, look for a trusted suffix, look for a trusted group, or if you open it and you want to use the source, open some others and see if it is corroborated. So click restraint, I think, is helpful for students just to make sure they know what's going on. Hold back just a second. Don't just go with, okay, this is right because the internet says. Ooh, sorry. Here we go. All right. So our next thing I want to talk about is corroboration and lateral reading. So I'm going to play in just a second a little John Green video, which any of us history teachers use a crash course now and then. We know John Green. My kids recently I've been peppering in some of the newer ones that he's done, and they're like, "What happened to John Green? He's aged." And I'm like, "Well, the original crash course videos are much older now. So yeah, you have some really young John Green, and you have some current day John Green, and they're all very concerned about him until I explain, no, he didn't age that much in like a year." Anyway, So corroboration and lateral reading really is going to play into the click restraint. So click restraint, we want to make sure that they're choosing good sources, that they're kind of looking through and not just going with the first ones offered, that they're really considering the fact that the search engine is not a truth engine. It's not just spitting out facts. It's spitting out things that based on an algorithm which people can influence, especially when money and ad time is included. So corroboration, again, is asking what do other sources say, and if something seems questionable, double or triple check. Again, if it seems a little too good to be true or seems surprising, there's a good chance it's not true. So finding other sources to back that up or to disprove it, super helpful. And of course, asking, what other sources say plays back to our historical thinking skills of corroborating and having an evidence-based argument, which even if they don't realize that's what they're doing, if they're participating in discussions of current events or research, they are making an evidence-based argument, whether it is more formal or not. So, corroboration and lateral reading. So we're going to ask students to analyze websites or sources, but also search for corroboration and sources using multiple tabs. I know that this is something I didn't realize I already did before I started researching this topic, is pulling up things and kind of comparing them. Using multiple tabs, using fact checker websites. So as much as the media bias chart was helpful, not everything was listed on there because I'm not paying for premium, so I seriously doubt my students will be paying for premium to see almost like every site listed. But using Snopes.com especially to help identify hoaxes and to identify things that are untrue. Factchecker.org, there's also lead stories, truth or fiction, and then of course the media bias fact check. And then something that I think a lot of kids are not aware of is reverse image search. Reverse image search is super helpful, especially when it comes to like social media. I grew up in Douglasville. There's a lot of conservatism going on. I got a lot of stuff happening on my Facebook feed that's getting posted, and I'm like, I don't think that that's true, or I'm curious where this came from. So just popping it in TinEye or RevEye, or even Google has like a reverse image search and being like, yeah, hey, maybe you should see where this came from. Super helpful, especially if kids are trying to use doctored or photoshopped images. Like I know for a while there was like an Instagram account one of my kids showed me where they were like photoshopping like cell phones and like modern day stuff into like World War II era photos, and I was like, that's not real. Like I had to explain.
Yeah, just these images, moving images of Lincoln and Tubman, and they're moving around.
Right, those are crazy.
A couple years ago.
And what's also interesting, so my husband is a video editor, and he does like Photoshop and graphics and all that kind of stuff. And like the deep fake videos, have you guys seen? Some of those are insane and should be concerning to all of us because they are able to fake so many things. Like, okay, this is not a really good example, but it's a funny one. One of our friends did one of the deep fake like video edits of my husband as Rihanna. And it was like, I mean, obviously you could tell it was his face on Rihanna's body, but it was crazy how almost real and like it could be. And that's just like a basic Photoshop situation. Anyway, sorry, off topic, but also my husband dancing as Rihanna was very funny. All right, so John Green is going to talk to us about lateral reading. Let me start this.
Hi, I'm John.
Okay, sorry, we don't need those. Right? Yes. My kids were like, what happened to him? Like, I don't know if they thought he was sick, but okay, let's start right at.
Professional photography, no grammatical errors or typos, and so when you read vertically, it is often impossible to distinguish reliable information from unreliable. But introducing other strategies into your reading, like looking elsewhere for additional information, can help you find out a lot more. When you're on a new website, instead of staying put and taking their word for it, you should just leave. Open a new tab and start looking for more information. That's called lateral reading. It's lateral because instead of moving up and down, you're moving from tab to tab. Basically, what I'm saying is that when your browser looks like this, it can actually be good news. Like here's a website from the American Legislative Exchange Council, or ALEC. This page from 2018 is about a back and forth in the federal government over regulating internet service providers like Comcast, Verizon, and AT&T. Regulating those providers could include setting the prices and rates for their services, or whether they're allowed to collect tolls from web websites or content creators, among other things. Apparently, ALEC is against government regulation of internet service providers. So we want to know who ALEC is. We can tell a few things by looking at their website, namely that this site is apparently not run by Haley Baldwin's famous uncle. Also, the site has a .org web address, which is often used by nonprofits. And the logo looks serious and kind of fancy. The website's easy to use. ALEC's About page says it's America's largest nonpartisan voluntary membership organization of state legislators dedicated to the principles of limited government, free markets, and federalism. Its board of directors page lists many U.S. representatives and senators. And if we stay on this page, it all seems, kind of boring and standard. But if you open a new tab and search ALEC, okay, yeah, the first results are Alec Baldwin, Haley's uncle. But below that, and below ALEC's website, lies their Wikipedia page and a website called alecexposed.org. Toward the bottom of the first page of search results, there are news articles by websites like The Atlantic and The Guardian. These say that corporations and nonprofits are also members of ALEC. We learned that one of ALEC's stated goals is to bring corporate leaders and legislators together so they can craft laws. A search for ALEC members shows that AT&T, Comcast, and Verizon have all been members, which means the original article about internet regulation has some, big conflicts of interest. Internet service providers obviously have a huge financial incentive to fight regulation, but the article doesn't disclose that. So in this case, lateral reading helped us find out who's really behind information, a huge group of lawmakers working with big corporations toward their common interests. All right, so now that you understand the idea of lateral reading, you may be wondering where you should go when you open that next tab. There are plenty of online sources you can use to look into different organizations and authors. They may not be perfect, but they're a good starting point if you're just trying to learn a little bit about a source of information. Let's go to the thought bubble. Newspapers can be a good place to start. Some of them have been around for decades or even centuries. They have tons of information. Traditionally, newspapers provided written information about current events printed daily or weekly. Today, many newspapers have turned into digital media companies that publish news online daily in a variety of formats. Some focus on international or national news, and others focus on local news. Magazines and digital news sites are useful for lateral reading too. However, it's important to note that many online news organizations have their own point of view. Sometimes these are explicit with...
Yeah, John Green. And did you ever think he could talk so slow? When I first watched it, I was like, oh man, I think the whole video, 14 minutes. I was like, 14 minutes of John Green? What is this, like an hour of everybody else? But nice, even keeled. So the idea of lateral reading really plays into click restraint, right? The idea of looking further, comparing the other sources, and again, maybe not using a specific instrument, but by just kind of browsing and reading. So the idea of, okay, here's this information that I've got. Okay, again, the idea that the ALEC website looks super polished, it looks nice, which we talked about last session, is that they were having a lot of issues in the University of Cincinnati about these students who were just like, oh yeah, this website looks good, it looks professional. And I shared the story about that girl in my history class who tried to use basically a white supremacist research, I don't know if research is really what they do, but like a website where they would publish articles because it was called the Historical Review, and it seemed innocuous to her boyfriend at the time. And then when she read over it, she's like, oh God, this is terrible. But the website looked credible. So having students recognize that the looks aren't everything, right? That they need to look into the actual content and the background. So opening up multiple tabs, being able to compare what's going on. First of all, click restraint, trying to choose something from the actual sources, from what they can tell from right off. And then, of course, looking a little bit deeper. In the video, he continues to talk about how about internet regulation, and it ends up coming into this whole thing of there was this town that wanted to have like basically a municipal internet service. And all of a sudden, there was all this backlash against it. Why would you want this? And they were like, well, because it'd be cheaper and it would be better service. And there was all this stuff, and they ended up being able to source back or find these websites out back to the internet and cable provider that was basically trying to do like a weird guerrilla anti-marketing campaign against this. So people wouldn't have known that if they wouldn't have followed up on their sources. So it was actually a pretty interesting video for that section. Okay. Are you going to let me go to the next one? My board was being temperamental when I was practicing.
Liberal consumed.
Okay. So on your agenda, I gave you, again, another catchy title, credible or clickbait. So I didn't choose two specific articles for this, but this is an article comparison activity. So this is, you would find two articles that were about the same topic and compare to see which one would fall, obviously, close. We would want to be higher into the middle of our media bias chart, of giving just the information and not really using too much of an agenda or a slant. So the A would be Article A, the B would be Article B. So the first question to ask is, what website published it? What does the domain name stand for? There's our handy little suffix there again, so like .org for organization or .gov.edu. So asking what the website is and what does the domain name stand for, right? If it's .com, is it for commerce? Are there ads, things like that? Oh, so the next question, is does the site have advertising? Are they trying to make money? Because that, again, is a motivation. They want people to be visiting their site so they can get more clicks and get that ad revenue, and that's really going to pull into what are they saying, right? They might not be trying to sell you an ad or a newspaper or a magazine, but they might be trying to sell you a membership to the website, or they're just trying to bring you there with maybe some catchy titles like credible or clickbait. The next one, what is the date of this article? So when was it published? Was it published close to the time it's talking about, or much later, or a little too soon? The next box is, we still have a bell schedule, okay. Everybody, first block is over. These articles are talking about the same event. So summarize in 2 sentences what happened. So you're pulling the facts from both of them. And then, did the reporter remain impartial, or did he or she try to persuade the reader in a certain direction? So how can you tell? So especially if you choose a political event, right, choosing a Fox News article, choosing an MSNBC article, you're going to have different takes. There's going to be different viewpoints there. And so those kind of comparing those two sources, it can be helpful for students to see both sides, that both the conservative and the liberal media, they both have an agenda, right? They're either trying to pull people to their side to read their stuff more or convince them. So identifying how if the reporter did not remain impartial, what kind of language was there that tipped them off? And then what sources did the reporter use or contact when writing this article? So most of the time, if you're going to have a credible article, you're going to have sources that are going to be known, well-respected, or common names, right, people have heard of, or be able to cite, okay, well, we went here, or they have a first-hand account. So if there's not anything from that, that definitely is a ding against the source. Then finding an About Us page for each website and summarizing what they find. So how do they describe their own organization? And then I think that really pulls in the lateral. You could add a step here for the lateral reading. So I did not make this instrument. This was from a Community of Online Research Assignments, Cora. But I think adding the lateral reading step would be really helpful. Okay, well, what did you find out about this organization during your click restraint and then your little lateral reading research section? And then at the end, they have to determine credible or clickbait. Again, this is a good intro assignment. It is very much not something you're going to be able to do with every source, but it could be interesting to do a craft article. Maybe you have half the class read one article and half the class read the other article, and then pull this in comparison and say, okay, well, which one do we believe more? Which one is more credible, or which one is more clickbait? So that could be an interesting extension activity to include with literacy. But yeah, I think this could be useful you could almost even use it for like documents of like, okay, this is from a trusted source, this isn't. But obviously I like a good rememberable name, right? Happy chart, crap chart, credible or clickbait. And then our next one, which next one we're going to talk about social media, and we're going to get into troll in just a second. But social media is a huge concern because our kids are basically addicted to it and on it 24/7. I know I probably also have a problem, need to not be on it as much. So I took this example from the Center for Online Civic Reasoning, SHEG, and they have a ton of these little small examples to use as intro, closing, whatever, if you're just trying to further scaffolding sources. So this one is a tweet from this guy named Mason. So Mason says, he posts an article, and the title of the article is Poll, 60% of Americans own guns for personal safety. Gun control continues to be a conscientious issue through the United States. And Mason says, poll shows most Americans own guns. Thumbs down, sad face, like Edward Munch scream face, I guess. I don't know what that is. So the question is Mason's claim about the poll accurate? So on the back of your handout I gave you today, I'm going to read just the first couple paragraphs. We're going to talk about what Mason's tweeted and what the article actually says if it's accurate. So, poll, 60% of Americans own guns for... Warning bell. 60% of Americans own guns for personal safety. A recent Gallup poll found that 60% of Americans own guns in order to feel safe. When the research group asked a random sampling of 309 gun-owning American adults as to the reasons for owning one, the vast majority cited a desire to protect themselves. After that, 36% said that they owned them for hunting, while 13% used them for recreation. Only 5% cited the Second Amendment as motivation, despite its frequent use as a talking point on the issue. Personal protection is the top reason Americans own a gun, as was true in 2000 and 2005. This, rather than the views on the Second Amendment, may explain why moving toward greater gun control, as Obama and many Democrats have sought to do, is difficult. Researchers noted on Gallup's website about their findings, those who own firearms for protection may feel that their own personal safety is a vital need on which they do not wish to compromise. So, is Mason's claim about the poll accurate? No, it's not. Mason claims most Americans own guns. Now, to be fair, was the wording in this source kind of tricky? Yeah, it was kind of made to be clickbaity. So really what it says, 60% of Americans own guns for personal safety, it's 60% of gun-owning Americans own guns, not 60% of our total population. So seeing that and reading that as a person, who is a teacher, who has higher ed, that I had to step back and think for a second of, wait, this article never made it clear that it said 60% of gun-owning Americans own the gun for this reason. Think about your student, your 9th grade or 10th grade student who just read this headline. Are they taking that extra step? Typically, no, definitely not. So there's like a ton of these little social media ones and stuff like that on the core website. That's just kind of the introduction of, okay, what is actually being said. So again, I think that this would be really helpful if you wanted to include this as like one of your craft articles, right? Have this as kind of a question, do your craft reading, and then go through it and say, oh, wait, so is this right, you guys? And then talk about the main ideas and talk about how to make sure they're distinguishing with kind of difficult language at times. Okay. And then our next one, you guys, I'm a little excited about this game. It's called Spot the Troll. And basically what it is helping students recognize, again, the source, especially on social media, if this is a true, real account or a troll account. So we know a while back, right, Twitter was found to have just like thousands and thousands of Russian bots that were just like tweeting out propaganda and all kinds of stuff. So this, we'll just do probably like maybe 1 or 2 of them. But it's a site and it has, I think, 8 total, where you look at the profiles and you try and determine whether they are real or if they are trolls. Ooh, let me go back. Sorry. I was practicing earlier. Okay. So, again, a troll is a fake social media account often created to spread misleading information. And while our focus on this is more political, how many of you guys have heard of your kids talk about a Finsta or a spam account, right? So being able to tell if something's a real account can be helpful for not only like citizenship, but also social life. Because who's telling who about your boyfriend doing what if it's not even a real account? Okay, so here is our first profile. So we've got Chloe Evans at Chloe Eva 12. She's a student in Atlanta. She joined June 2014. This one's kind of a graphic picture. It says, "This is all going to hell," hashtag dead horse. This one says, "But who's responsible? Obama?" Hashtag dead horse. Hashtag chemical accident Louisiana. "Bravery is the capacity to behave properly even when scared half to death." Omar N. Bradley, quote, hashtag true. Hashtag something you need to know about me: I used to be a model. Don't ask what the meaning of life is, you define it. Maturity is, maturity is, whatever. So do we think she is a troll or real?
True.
Maybe she's a troll. Let's see. True, she is a troll. So she is posting about hoax events here. Yeah. Profiles of attractive women are often used for trolls. They just get more interaction in general.
I think she joined in
2014.
She only had 100 followers, and she's a girl.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, here's our next profile. Harmony Anderson. The college girl who managed to stay conservative. Hashtag pro-life. Hashtag pro-2A. Hashtag America first. This is my second account where I share my political and social views. She's from Iowa. She joined September 2019. So she does have 4,200 followers. She is following a lot. So Pennsylvania voter rolls near Pittsburgh are full of inaccuracies. Leak, DNC group teaches illegals to vote. 22 million or even more illegals now in America, and the Dems want them to have full citizenship. 22 million. Tucker Carlson here. We've got a lot of stuff here. We've got some Melania posts. Yeah, why would Vogue ever want to put this stunning, timeless, classic beauty on their cover when they can have a linebacker in drag? What hypocrites they are. Hashtag FLOTUS is astounding. It's possible he's under the impression he's been running for Senate this whole time about Joe Biden. So what are we thinking?
Is it hoax?
Troll?
Troll.
Troll,
we
real?
can stop with the avatar in the background.
Oh, sorry. So yeah, I think I put it down here at the bottom where it says this one is a troll. Yes. So she is a troll. She is attributed to the Russian Internet Research Agency. So there's a lack of personal information. She doesn't have anything other than politics. She's trying to connect to this community. All right, we'll do the last one, profile 3. All right, we've got Christopher Warwick. Lives in Columbia City, Indiana. He's from there. He's got a picture of him and his daughters and his wife, I'm assuming. It says, "Share this violent or graphic photo everywhere and tell Zuckerberg to, suck it, but such it. This is why you don't step on the flag. This is why you stand. This is why we don't erase history. You're not black, white, yellow, or brown. You're an American. Start acting like it. This is a photo of Chick-fil-A honoring fallen soldiers on Memorial Day. It's triggering liberals across social media. Let's make it go viral. Share 1 million times." This is how you have fun in the tractor. Oh, God. Jesus holding the world. Pray for the world. May God bless everyone. Hashtag coronavirus. We've got don't forget about this place for lunch. I didn't say the end would be signaled by trumpets. I said Trump/Pence. All right, I had not seen that one. All right, so what do we think? Troll or legit? Legit? Correct, right? It's because we have more facts about his life. We've got personal things. Likes and shares, right? And it seemed like much more he had stuff that was personal. Right. Okay. Sorry, we're not going to go through all of them, but I do think that's kind of a fun activity. Troll plus, they like to talk about anything that's a little silly. All right. So our goal is to make questioning sources become a habit. Working with students to analyze historical documents should help students to develop the skills to analyze modern sources. Students may employ more time while researching for academics than in typical media consumption. However, the goal for questioning and corroborating sources is to become habit. Being more aware of fact and fiction will allow students to become better informed and more responsible citizens. So again, building these skills in a social studies classroom, in a post-secondary classroom, and then in their life, being able to figure out, is this true? Is this, credible or clickbait? Is this a troll or is this, true or false? Helpful curriculum outlets. Obviously, Shag and Core, they're super helpful. Like I said, they have a ton of stuff that is like more extensive, and then some of those short little ones like we did with Mason in the tweet article. Common Sense Education has a lot of stuff on digital citizenship, and PBS has a great thing on news and media literacy and fake news. So honestly, as much as helpful as it is to incorporate in our classrooms, these are also really good sub-plans. Like, you can relate it to almost any topic you're on and have students do a credible or clickbait. Okay, find 2 articles while I'm gone about whatever subject. So it is kind of easy. You know, when we're doing primary source documents, you need specific documents for certain things versus if you're like, okay, find me 2 sources on the Civil War, you know, and tell me, okay, which one is more credible. You're still learning about Civil War, but you're also building skills. So these are super helpful. Again, I'll post these links in our Outlook group. And then if you do not mind doing my little feedback chart, I'd really appreciate you. Thank you so much for sitting through all my PLs. I appreciate your time so much. And this is the last one. So enjoy your work day. I appreciate you.